So this is maybe the most important news story over the course of 2019, certainly the biggest news scandal over the course of 2019, as in a story that has gotten almost zero mention at all in any of mainstream press. I think during the course of this interview that's linked in the show notes, they mentioned that they found one story buried in the New York Times that mentions the OPCW whistleblowers in passing in a sentence once. So it's apparently the only mention of this in any of the mainstream press, be it BBC, be it New York Times, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, what we're talking about are the OPCW leaks that exposed the criminal Syria cover-up in the Duma gas attack of April 2018. So the leaked documents...
I'm very sorry to interrupt, but I want to mention Tulsi Gabbard was one of the only politicians that's like, hey, we need to wait for the evidence to come in, while everyone else was like, nope, it was Syria, go for it, go invade, invade, invade.
Right, and so that's one of the things about this that is crazy, is that more and more evidence seems to just point to the fact that the United States was apparently coercing the OPCW and OPCW engineers into coming up with this conclusion. They very much started with a conclusion and worked backwards. So the leaked documents and testimony from inside the OPCW show there were major doubts about the allegations the Syrian government committed a chemical weapons attack in the city of Duma in April of 2018. Inspectors who were on the ground in Duma complained that their findings were distorted and excluded according to one OPCW whistleblower. This censorship was conducted under direct U.S. pressure. So one of the biggest stories in 2019 was undoubtedly the OPCW Syria scandal, a cover-up inside the world's top chemical weapons watchdog that was used to justify the U.S.-led military strikes on Syria. So according to one OPCW whistleblower who spoke to the British journalist Jonathan Steele, this censorship was conducted under direct U.S. pressure. So one of the things they mentioned in this interview is the specialists or pseudo-specialists that are referred to in some of these documents. There's some speculation that they were Bellingcat employees, which if you've been following some of this on Twitter and figures like Caitlin Johnstone, who we're actually going to talk about later today, and Jimmy Dore, they often bring up how Bellingcat is a very politicized propaganda arm that has some very deep ties into some of the reporting that goes around Syria in particular. So a new batch of documents released by WikiLeaks, a top OPCW official ordered the removal of a critical document from the organization's secure registry. So this secure registry was the place that ended up basically aggregating the investigative documents that wound up in the final report. So there's a leaked email showing top-ranking OPCW official ordering the deletion of this document that's one of the documents that said, hey, that was kind of important. That was actually on-the-ground investigation from this attack that is alleged. Why are we deleting that just because it contradicts these findings? Okay, so another leaked document shows the OPCW, the experts were conclusive in their statements that there was no correlation between the symptoms of chlorine usage and chlorine exposure. Right, so that's what's alleged in the Duma attack, is the use of chlorine as a chemical weapons agent. So the OPCW, ignoring its own data and experts, the OPCW concluded that there were, quote, reasonable grounds that the use of a toxic chemical as a weapon took place. This toxic chemical contained reactive chlorine. So that's basically directly contradicting their own engineers. Even now, as the suppressed findings come out via brave whistleblowers and WikiLeaks, they're still being kept from the public. And that media self-censorship has become a scandal into itself. So this is an interview with an award-winning professor of science and technology and national security policy at MIT named Theodore Postel, who says, I want the press accountable for not doing what they should to help subject these whistleblowers, to help protect these whistleblowers. I think it's criminal as far as I'm concerned. So this is a well-respected MIT professor who has gone over, he's sort of familiar with the techniques and these technical documents and has gone over a lot of them. And he finds it's astounding, actually, to note that there are some pretty obvious things that one would expect to find in the conditions of these particular missile attacks. There are actually two. There's the Duma attack, and then there's another one and I can't remember the name of the city off the top of my head, but they're both being held as highly suspect by the OPCW engineers. And he'll go over like, well, you would expect to see this, and they actually go in the OPCW official report and say we should expect to see this, and then show pictures. And then say, these pictures show what we expected to see. And you're like, but those pictures don't show the thing that you just outlined that you said that you would expect to see. Like things like the way the rebar would bend. They say it should go this way. And look, the picture confirms that. And it's like, yeah, but that picture is the opposite of the way it's supposed to bend. Like, you're just telling me, it's like literally don't believe your lying eyes, right? You're telling me that there should be a dent in the canister in this way. And then you're showing me the canister. And then you say, look, there's the dent. And you're like, there's no dent there. Like, you're telling me, like, oh, the hole should be, like, one of the points that he made in the roof one, right, the one that went in into the town of Duma. At that speed, the missile should go through the roof and create a hole a lot like a nail, right? Mm-hmm. When you drive a nail into a piece of wood, you don't expect the hole to be twice the size of the diameter of the nail. You expect the hole to be roughly the size of a nail. So when a brittle roof like concrete gets impacted at very, very high speed by a missile that's designed as a chemical delivery agent like this, you may have some minor explosion at the very top or very bottom of the impact point, but the actual through hole should be pretty much the exact same diameter as the projectile. And it's not in this case. It's like double the size. And it's like, okay, they literally just explained in the document that it should be this width and it should look like this. And then they show a picture and go, see, it's right. Or are they just hoping people aren't going to read it?
Well, Paul, let's be fair to them. It could have just been that a larger bomb went through the hole first, and then the smaller bomb went through and actually destroyed the larger bomb.
And just happened to fit right into that hole.
Yeah, exactly.
Just happened to fit right in there.
No, and then a pilot came in to remove the fake bomb because it was the wrong one. And then
the second bomb destroyed the first bomb.
The second bomb destroyed the first one. It had special prior bomb destroying features, right? And it was necessary as a
every chemical weapon
agent.
I've ever used has special pre-bomb destroying features in it, Paul. Let's be real.
Everyone you've ever used.
All zero. I promise it's zero.
You have a 0% rate on the bomb destroying.
0% is better than impossible.
Oh, we're tying that into circles now. Wait, what?
It works because it doesn't have to work, because this doesn't have to work, and it hasn't worked.
I really wanted to hammer this point home again, though, because I really think is sort of the big story, the big news scandal of this year, of everything. People are going to want to say, oh, it's impeachment. That's the biggest news thing. Oh, it's, the wind up to the election, it's the primary, it's the this, it's the that. No. Our government is sending people to tell an international body that is meant to be a high arbiter of truth, right? Someone that all countries can rely upon to uphold and provide sort of neutral, unbiased, dry, fact-driven evidence around claims that need to be adjudicated in sort of an international context, right, that everyone can agree upon, right, that they're going to have to be this agency that is above reproach for everyone, and they're literally, drawing their conclusions based on what the United States is telling them to do. And that is an absolute travesty.
Well, again, I think it's... So either, again, we have two stories we can go with. Let's just lay them out. Let's be fair. Let's be fair arbiters of the truth. Either Syria had chemical weapons and then agreed to give them up under Obama, actually agreed to give them up, and then gave them up. And then when the U.S. was withdrawing, was like, the one thing, like barrel bombs, America's fine with those. Shooting civilians, America's fine with that. But you know what they'll freak out about? They'll freak out about the chemical weapons that we no longer have. So let's create new chemical weapons out of nothing because obviously we gave this stuff up, so we just materialized it back into existence. And then right as the U.S. is leaving, we're going to drop a bomb through a hole twice as big, but we're going to have a pre-missile that goes through to make that hole that can be destroyed by the second chemical weapon. And right when the U.S. is leaving, we're going to drop it, and we're going to kill 50 completely unrelated civilians in a place that has no strategic interest after, again, we've given up everything, but we made new stuff so that the U.S. will have an excuse to come back and reinvade our country. Or nothing actually really happened, and maybe the thing that happened was that the Saudis, who have those same chemical weapons and are known to shift those supplies through terrorist organizations that are allied with Saudi Arabia and therefore us to a degree, put something in an area and then set it off, or just someone was using Clorox spray on a window at some point and that had a chemical background.
No, that's the thing, is that the chemical report, actually what one of these whistleblowers is noting is there's nothing consistent with what they're seeing on the ground, the symptoms they're reporting, and symptoms of a chlorine gas attack. The symptoms don't even match. So nobody was overusing Windex or something. Does that have chlorine in it? It must.
Some bleach or something. Bleach is chlorine.
That's chlorine.
What do you think, Lainey?
I'm thinking a couple of things here, but the media self-censorship, I think, is something that's very interesting. And certainly it may be consistent with wanting to appeal to advertisers. And given that the media organizations tend to be consolidated and owned by one major corporation, there's a real possibility that there's some influence there. Another thing also could be the fact that many media organizations don't invest in actual journalists anymore. They're not necessarily hiring people with engineering or science backgrounds who could evaluate this and report accordingly. They may be throwing this information over to lay people who are able to put words together, but who don't have the kind of background necessary to evaluate these leaked documents and to see are what we're seeing make sense. Does any of this make sense? And I think that that's a concern as well. And it's becoming a more serious concern, as far as I'm concerned, in the media, when you have no fact checkers, no professional photo editors, everybody's relying on freelancers, and there's a race to get content out there, and there's nobody who is willing to actually sift through this stuff as a scientific or engineering expert, or with someone with a military background who knows about these weapons and can say, do these leaks make sense, or are these leaks another form of propaganda?
And I think that the other thing we could say on this is that there's one thing we can all be certain of as people of media. If you think that this wasn't a chemical attack, and regardless of all the things that we've brought up, if you disagree with the status quo, you're a Russian asset. That's just how it is.
Russian asset. And you're probably an unusual American who's going to vote for Tulsi Gabbard.
Mm-hmm.